Hi everyone.
Hello, welcome to the channel. It's August 17th, and today the topic is The Buck Stops Here.
Interesting, very good.
It begins with a quote by Epictetus. For nothing outside my reasoned choice can hinder or harm it. My reasoned choice alone can do this to itself. If we would lean this way whenever we fail, and would blame only ourselves and remember that nothing but opinion is the cause of a troubled mind and uneasiness, then by God, I swear we would be making progress. I love it. If we would lean on our reasoned choice whenever we fail and blame only ourselves, and remember that nothing but opinion is the cause of a troubled mind and uneasiness, we would be making progress.
Got it. So the buck stops here means like we stop the blame with ourselves.
We only blame ourselves.
That's what I'm saying. We
Oh, I see.
we
Like we
stop
stop
the blame with ourselves. It doesn't go past ourselves.
We don't blame others.
We don't blame others. Mm-hmm.
Extreme ownership. Yes, it's much more empowering to live like this. And there was like a big shift for me because one of our, it's not really a value, I guess. It's like not one of our formal values, but we talk about extreme ownership a lot at work. And so I remember having these communication issues with a developer I was working with, and everything that came into my head was a complaint about the other person and how the other person was not doing things up to how I wanted them to be done. And then I was going to go talk to my boss about it, and it became obvious that I could not say this to her. This would not be an acceptable way of framing the problem. So I had to restructure the problem psychologically to get to the place where it was like, oh, I don't like how I'm engaging in this situation. And every time I can learn to shift it, because my brain is so programmed to go I don't like what you did, I don't like what God did, I've been so programmed to blame outwardly. Every time I can remember and pull that back in and say, no, let me take extreme ownership of this, it feels so empowering. It feels like I can actually do something to change it versus like when I'm pointing outside, it feels like a totally hopeless situation because how is this other person going to magically change, or how is God going to magically change based on what I want?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when I'm blaming, when I notice that I'm blaming others, it never sits well at that moment. Like I'm aware of that if when it's coming out, right? And it's never really the intention to do that before I go talk to somebody or something, but it's very contagious. Bitching is contagious, right? Like somebody's just like, oh, I don't like this guy because the guy did that, and you're hearing it and you're like, well, yeah, they kind of did that, so yeah, you're right, and now you're part of that whole thing.
It's
right?
one thing it's one skill to learn how to not blame when I'm alone, but it's a totally different situation when there's a culture of blaming.
Well, and then it's interesting because also sometimes the blaming, it's not the best way to do it, but people do get, they actually get closer on
Bond. Yeah.
bond. That's how
Yeah.
Like people bond over something that
Gossip.
they don't like together. Right?
Yeah. It's an easy, powerful way of bonding.
Yeah, but then it needs to transition into something else. Maybe the bond can begin like this, like, oh my God, we both hate the lunch lady, right? But it can't. But the entire relationship cannot be based on hating the lunch lady. That's not gonna last, right? It's gonna be like, hey, I hate her. Yeah, me too. I know about and now. Yeah, still. How about you? Yeah, and now what? Right? Like, what do we do as two individuals to have this relationship about something else, but I can see that initial connection is a very strong connection to go point out the garbage over there, right? Yeah.
It definitely happens. It's not ideal.
For sure. I do it, and as I'm saying, like last time I did that, or last time I was part of that kind of a thing, I'm saying things, I'm like, I don't want to be saying this about that person, right? Like, it's not,
you capture it. Doesn't feel right.
It just doesn't feel right at the moment, right? It's
even though it's still happening,
and it's confusing because the connection feels so good, right? The connection with this person feels so good, but the connection about bitching about somebody else, that's what it's like. Oh man, like I really want this connection, but why do we have to be connected about this negative thing, right? It's
And then it's hard to know. It's a separate skill to help navigate that relationship now into a healthy place where it's not about the shared hatred of the lunch lady. Now it's like maybe about a shared investigation of why do I hate the lunch lady so much? Is this something I need to get over? Like it needs to transform into something different than just that hatred. That hatred is just like a very superficial kind of a thing, but yeah.
But we use it because we get triggered by it. We get triggered by these, we call them stupid moments, right? Or people make mistakes and we notice those mistakes, and those are the things that we want to connect on with others, right? Not with the people who made the mistake, with others talking about that mistake, how they made a mistake.
Yeah, it's such a slippery slope there, because when the culture is like that,
that's why avoiding it is the best. And that's why as it's coming out, I was like,
it's so slippery. Like, they've done studies that show, like, if you have a healthy person and you bring them into like an unhealthy environment, they are not going to make that unhealthy environment healthy. The unhealthy environment will pull them into their dysfunction. And like, this is my last job. I couldn't figure out how to have the buck stop with me. There was too much of that poison already in those relationships. And while I loved those people, it was like one of these, it felt like too far. I didn't have the skills to now shift and transform the way I'm thinking and perceiving about the situation, the way we're all connecting about the situation. There was just no way for me to shift that as an individual. So I was like, all right, well, I'm out. Like, that's where I had to get to with it, and that was the right call, because you can't shift every environment.
You can't shift every environment at any given time that you chooses to. Sometimes it works. You can change environment, but it's not on your it's not on your schedule or something like that, And that's what we assign ourselves to that schedule and say, well, this environment needs to change in 6 months, and if it doesn't, I can't deal with this. And 6 months later, no way that this has changed, right? It could be changing on a good path, but no way it's done to where you have it, and now it's this like, oh, it didn't change, and I need to get the hell out of here, And that's the right way to do, because it's so much easier to find a place where you fit better than changing the environment of where you already are to fit you better. That's ridiculous. That's a ridiculous undertaking. Unless it's yours, unless like, hey, this is my business that's not working because I build it in some sort of a weird way. I need to pivot and change it. Okay, that's your thing. But you have control over all those changes, but you're changing things from middle of the pyramid upwards. That has never worked.
it was
And
all,
if it does work, it's like it's too little changes with too much effort, right?
I mean, yeah, like when I'm in the middle of the pack,
Yeah.
the change that needs to happen is essentially not within my control to change.
Right.
So then if it changes, it's just a happenstance or coincidence that God was like, have this change that you so wanted. But how do I trust that change? Because I don't actually have control over it.
Yeah.
So that change could go away tomorrow. It could become something completely different. So yeah, I mean, that's the risk that we have all the time. But if it's already bad, then I gotta get out.
Okay. Let's see what Ryan has for us.
Nice. Okay, Ryan says, today, see if you can go without blaming a single person or single thing. Someone messes up your instructions. It's on you for expecting anything different. Someone says something rude. It's your sensitivity that interpreted their remark this way. Your stock portfolio takes a big loss. What did you expect making such a big bet? Why are you checking the market day to day anyway? Whatever it is, however bad it may be, see whether you can make it a whole day, laying it all on your reasoned choice. If you can't make it for a day, see if you can make it for an hour. If not for an hour, then for 10 minutes. Start where you need to. Even 1 minute without playing the blame game is progress and the art of living.
Yeah, that's a good goal set, I guess. Like having it maybe part of like a morning routine to say, hey, let me try not to blame anyone, right? Which is funny because you literally like drive out of your driveway and you're in a blame game instantly. The second you honk at somebody, you're blaming somebody, right?
The second you're honking to try to communicate something other than, hey, you're accidentally going to create an accident.
Yeah. Or
most
like,
honking is not to communicate that.
Or like I get like if somebody friendly hugs at somebody's on the phone.
Paying attention.
That's fine, but like it's the angry.
Yeah, when you're trying to communicate like you fucked up, essentially.
Right,
like, why are you
right.
fucking with my day right now? Yeah, when people do things at work, like the immediate thing is, this other person.
And that might be as subtle as you're driving, right? And all of a sudden, like, I was like, that guy. Like, like you're in a red light or something, like barely, right? He's like, that guy. Like, you don't have to even hug. It's just that's small.
I mean, that reaction.
What you were saying about work.
Well, and that reaction is tied into like name calling, and name calling is a total blame game.
Yeah.
I'm calling you an asshole. What does that mean? Like that means that I'm blaming you for some of your behavior.
And then we take it down a notch. Well, I don't want to be calling people assholes, so I'll just call them doo-doo heads. Or but that's the same deal, right? Like
idiot, loser. It doesn't matter what flavor of name. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just we want our frustration to be on them. We want them to be different to how it's supposed to look to us. It's ridiculous.
Instead of like staying in my lane, and my lane is like, what do I learn from this? There's maybe something for me to learn here, and then what's my next move? What can I learn? What's my next move? Mm-hmm. Like that's really the only useful place for my psychological energy to be, because any other place that my psychological energy goes is just unwasted. It's just fuel that's not producing anything.
Yeah.
And then it feels better, right? Like it feels so much better to wake up in a day when I'm not primed to like pick apart what's wrong with everything else and everyone else except for me, because I'm the perfect one, that day just feels like shit.
Yeah, also self-blame. It's another one, right? Like it's not okay to blame yourself either, right?
Yeah. Sure. Maybe when blaming yourself, you mean like doing this, calling yourself a name or something, the emotional component, the judgmental component of it. But it is imperative to take responsibility, we might say. Like, not blame myself and call myself a name.
That's a different thing. Well, not taking responsibility is different than not blaming my own self.
Yeah, I'm just bringing up the distinction because he's talking about blame in here. Like, no, blame yourself. They're saying it, blame yourself. But he's not talking about blame yourself in the way of like, now call myself a nasty name.
Take responsibility.
He's saying take responsibility. Yeah.
Not blame yourself. Blame yourself doesn't do anything. You calling yourself stupid or like, oh, you shouldn't have done that, like that doesn't do anything. Right? Like, you know already you shouldn't have done it. You don't have to say you shouldn't have done it. It's just like that is the calling name, and you know, that's essentially what we heard in schools and parents and all that stuff, you know, pointing out where we're wrong so the system can continue to be flawless. Awesome. Till the next one.
Thanks for tuning in today. We'll see you here tomorrow.
Bye.